Gopi Janavallabha Labha Jayo Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Purnatira Vanachari Yamunatira What an amazing day, what a divine day, Vamana Dvadashi. This Dvadashi and Ekadashi, which comes after Radhashtami, is like the most important week in Vaishnava calendar. You have Radhashtami, you have Radhashtami, then you have Ekadashi, then you have Vamana Dvadashi. Today is the appearance day of Lord Vamana. Okay? After Vamana, then the same day is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day. Tomorrow is Srila Haridas Thakur's appearance day. So like you can't,
Actually yesterday was Vaman Dvadas.
Yesterday.
Yeah, today is Bhaktivinoda Thakur, tomorrow Haridas, and then the day after Ananta Chaturasi, right?
No, Sunday. No.
Oh, same day tomorrow. Ananta Chaturasi.
What is Ananta Chaturasi?
Vishwarup Mahotsav.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then Bhadra Purnima.
Bhadra Purnima Monday.
Hari Hari Bol. Hari Hari Bol. For the pleasure of Sambal Vaishnavas, I got 3 more sets of Bhagavatam this morning.
Hari Bol!
This is in addition to 2 yesterday.
Hari Bol!
I'm not seeing any WhatsApp messages, and it's not going back and forth.
Okay,
it's not going back and forth.
I'll get it going.
Last year we had this back and forth, you know, 1 more set, half more set, 2 more books, 1 more book.
I'll get it going, bro.
Quarter set, Bhanuguru. Thank you for joining us in real time. So devotees, its time is also good. We can watch here.
You can have my watch.
It's 11:20. Devotees, thank you for those who have joined us on YouTube. I'm pretty inspired that Chanakya Pandit Prabhu Chandra Bhanu Prabhu, Bhakta Hari and Bhakta Aiden are with us here. And along with our Shri Radha Nirbar, Shri Devraj Maharaj, Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadra, Shri Gaur Nitai and Srila Prabhupada with a picture of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which is not different than Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So I've been asked to speak and given this opportunity to speak about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It is pretty much the proverbial dwarf trying to catch the moon about speaking about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I must express my disqualification, utter disqualification. Almost a shame, almost an insult to Vaishnava Parampara. I have been asked to speak about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but I'll try to serve you to the best of my ability. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, also known as the seventh Goswami, appeared, I don't know the exact dates, but appeared in the late 19th century. And he was known as Kedarnath Datta. And that's too loud. Very close to the door, please. And you know the life and history of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, many of you are familiar with. And on this day, I would like to encourage my audience to read this book, The Seventh Goswami. That's the entire life and times of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So that's the biography, the historical biography of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I would like you to encourage to read that. Today I will go on some tattva and some philosophical principles which Bhaktivinoda Thakur established. And one principle I'd like to mention specifically which I'd like to focus on. And of course we'll end with a little introduction to Jaiva Dharma. So today I would like to encourage my readers to make Jaiva Dharma as an integral part of their sadhana, make integral part of their life. That's a book written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Vaishnavas. It takes you, Aiden, from the very beginning of Krishna consciousness all the way to Prema, and all the stages of Prema, all the stages of Bhav, Raga, Anuraga, Mana, and all of the other technical details in the most lucid and comprehensive way. So what is Jaiva Dharma? Why don't we just start there? I was going to do it at the end. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of the most seminal contributions he made is he wrote 108 books. And most of the songs that we sing in our temples were coined by Srila Bhaktivinoda. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur composed this poem book called Sharanagati. It's a book of all his collection of poems, which is considered the epitome of Vaishnava mood, Vaishnava Siddhanta, Vaishnava philosophy. All his songs and prayers are pretty much, they encapsulate in those words the entire Vaishnava mood. And Srila Prabhupada said that the songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they are like a thunderbolt. They pierce your rock-like heart. They crush it and it melts it. And what comes out of your heart is prema. Just by singing those songs, they're like thunderbolt. They crush your stone-like heart, melt it, and then what comes out is liquid prema. And prema is always liquid. Whether it's tears or perspiration, or it's Radha Kund, prema is always in Vaishnava theology corroborated with liquid, with water. Prema is a state of liquidity. Whether it's Ganges or Radha Kund, or tears or perspiration, it's liquid state of existence. So that's what the Bhaktivinoda Thakur songs do to you. His writings inspired the heck out of it. His poems, his songs, the anthology, the collection of his poems, the Sharanagati, is the epitome of Vaishnava literature. No comparison, no comparison, no comparison. And that is why he was called the seventh Goswami. Because his writings were at par with the literature of Goswamis. His life was exemplary. So among the 108 books he wrote, Madhurya Kadimbini, the seminal works, Navadvip Mahatmaya, Bhagavad Gita, commentary on Chaitanya Charitamrita, his Bhajan Rahasya, Madhurya Kadimbini, seminal literatures, Bhakti Tattva Vivek, seminal literatures about the essence of philosophy. And one who has not read it cannot understand the gift of Krishna consciousness. Unless you really dive deep into the literature of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, dive deep into the literature of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you cannot understand Krishna consciousness. Not even a slight bit, no sir. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of his seminal works, or you can call the seminal of the seminal works, is Jaiva Dharma. Jaiva, of course, Jiva, living entity, and Dharma refers to his eternal occupation, the eternal religion. Jaiva Dharma means eternal religion, literally translated. Sanatan Dharma, the word Sanatan Dharma, can also be translated as Jaiva Dharma. So Jaiva Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, the eternal religion of the soul, is Jaiva Dharma. And what is Jaiva Dharma is that the protagonist in Jaiva Dharma is based on Bengal, Mayapur, Navadvip, 17th century, early 17th century. So Mahaprabhu is 1486 to 1534. All the Goswamis are, late 16th century, okay? And Jiva Goswami disappears by the time early 17th century rolls in. The date of Chaitanya Charitamrita is 1581, okay? And by early 17th century, the Goswamis are disappearing. And one of the direct disciples of Raghunath Das Goswami is Premvilas Babaji. So Premvilas Babaji, he's like a completely Rasika, topmost Paramahamsa Vaishnava, doing his bhajan in the groves of Navadvip. And two students come to him, Vijay Kumar and Vrajanath. And they come to him, and one of them is a Jnani, one of them is just a wrangling smartha, just little curiosity about spiritual life. One is an uncle, one is a nephew. The uncle is a Jnani. And he comes to Mayapur and he meets Premvilas Babaji. And his entire process of conversion and their discussion. What is Gyan? What is Bhakti? What is Advaita? What is Shuddha Vaishnavism? So it goes like a question and answer. And then, seeing the uncle transformed, the nephew goes to get him back. We'll go and get your uncle back. And the nephew also becomes transformed. And those questions, first discussions between Vraj Kumar and Vijay, and then their discussions with Premvilas Babaji. And then you have Muslims coming and challenging Premvilas Babaji. And Christians coming and challenging Premvilas Babaji. So Premvilas Babaji is the protagonist. And then ultimately we see these two devotees, Vijay Kumar and Rajanath. One become a completely Paramahamsa, doing bhajan in Mayapur. Another one goes to Jagannath Puri and meets Gopal Guru Goswami and is doing bhajan in Jagannath Puri. So this is basically the main storyline of Jaiva Dharma. And Jaiva Dharma is a novel. It's written in a question and answer way. Question which faces all of us. And it talks about ideal householder life. It talks about all aspects of Krishna consciousness. And then it goes from Nishtha to Ruchi to Asakti to Bhava, different stages of Bhava, Prema, and different stages of Prema. In a way that anybody can understand. So Jaiva Dharma, and I have copies today for 3 fortunate recipients. Okay? So I would encourage you to read Jaiva Dharma. That was a transformative book in my life. I read Jaiva Dharma very early on in my Krishna consciousness. I think probably in my second year of Krishna consciousness. And that sealed it. Like I really had experience of ecstasy reading it and deep contemplation. Just reading Jaiva Dharma. And that was like, it answered every single question I had about material life, spiritual life, able to get a roadmap to navigate my journey. Okay, so I've spoken a little bit about Jaiva Dharma. Amazing, it's divided into chapters, divided into sections, and it's divided into stages. So you have another section for Bhava Bhakti, another section for Prema Bhakti. So devotees can just take it to wherever they can take it and then come back to it. And it's something which should be read and reread again. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur's 3 significant contributions to the Vaishnava Sampradaya. Why is he called seventh Goswami? Number 1, he wrote 108 books. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life was 24 hours in a day, right? Guess what? He also had 24 hours. And in 24 hours in a day, he would sleep for 3 hours or take rest. He would work for 6 hours, court work, and he would accomplish in those 6 hours by, as per the record of his British magistrates and other bosses, he would accomplish work of 3 men working 8 hours a day. he was given the position of the High Court judge, like a topmost judge. His decisions were to the point, considering all the factors, never wrong, and people would come to him from all over India for counseling on difficult cases. You can imagine what it means to be a Supreme Court judge, right? He was the equivalent of a Supreme Court judge under British government. And it was British officers and British judicial hierarchy who would come to him for advice. So he would work 6 hours a day, he would sleep 3 hours a day. That's 9 hours. Out of the remaining 15 hours, he would write 8.5 hours a day, engage in personal study 2.5 hours a day, and 3 hours was for Jaiva. He would take rest at 8, get up at midnight, get up at 11, write from 11 to 4. 4 to 4:30 he would take rest, and 4:30 to 7 he would do japa. 7 to 7:30 was time for correspondence. 7:30 to 8 was time for his daily duties, bathing and all that. 8 to 8:30 was time for breakfast. And I believe 9 to 12 would be the court time, 9 to 12. 12 to 1 he would come, take a little rest and take some prasadam, lunch prasadam. 1 to 4 was court time. 4 to 6:30 was time for personal reading and review of scriptures. 6:30 to 8 I'm forgetting what exactly he would do. 8 to 11 he would take rest, and then 11 to 4 was writing again. So this was his daily schedule. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's first major accomplishment was, at the time Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared, the books of Goswamis were completely obscure, the literature. He could not find a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita anywhere. Lord Chaitanya's movement had been overtaken by deviant sects. Caste Brahmanism had crept into the movement of Lord Chaitanya. India, the Christianity and Upanishads was being linked together to form what is called as the Bhadra society, the enlightened society. Enlightened Hindus had given up Hinduism as backward. Hinduism by this time, the Sanatana Dharma was declared as completely mythological, irrelevant, backward, orthodox, prejudiced. Christian missionaries had taken over India. Muslims had taken over India. All of the temples and centers have been desegregated. Bengal itself, which is now Bangladesh, had become Muslim. And Lord Chaitanya's movement was in the hand of Sahajiyas. Sahajiyas, in the name of Chaitanya Vaishnavism, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more at the end, because that is the main thrust of the talk today. To understand where this comes from, what we are doing. Why is it that we are excited about distributing Srimad Bhagavatam? This has to be understood in the current context, otherwise there will be much confusion down the line. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, after his conversion experience and after he became a Chaitanya Vaishnava, he set everything single-handedly all right. He separated the wheat from the chaff. He separated Siddhanta from Apasiddhanta. He gave the theological underpinnings of a worldwide religious movement. Everything we're doing, the underpinning, the theological underpinning, the mood, the methodology was given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He made several preaching innovations. He discovered the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya's birthplace had been completely obscured. He discovered it and he got it confirmed by Jagannath Das Babaji. Paramahamsa Rasika Vaishnava. Discovered the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, built a temple there, he would go on a horse from village to village, home to home, asking for 1 rupee. The cost of construction of the temple was 100,000 rupees. He would ask for 1 rupee from everybody. Discovered the birthplace, built the temple, discovered Yoga Peeth, the site of yoga. Yoga Peeth means site of union. The site of union with Lord Chaitanya. Made incredible preaching innovation, started Namahata preaching. Namahata preaching, which has now expanded into congregation development, Bhakti Vrikshas. Mayuri goes every Saturday to Prabhu's program. Namahata, right? Hata, a marketplace of the holy name. He's the one who gave a systematic form, and he actually wrote everything. How many people should be in one group? How many groups make a one larger group? How many larger groups make a larger group? Who's going to manage the group? What are the responsibility of Bhakti Vriksha leader? What is the responsibility of a group leader? What is the responsibility of a village leader? Everything systematically, to the point that he encompassed that one day the entire world will become a Vaishnava. And how would you organize Vaishnava society? He wrote about it. He envisioned it and wrote about it. What is the duty of everybody in Namahata? And he called himself the sweeper of the holy name. I will be the sweeper of the holy name. He wrote texts. He defeated and assaulted philosophically caste Brahmanas. He explained the life and teachings of Mahaprabhu. He separated the wheat from the chaff. And he made 3 predictions. In 1896, he made 3 predictions. The day Jaiva Dharma was published, he made 3 prophecies. He says, now a personality will appear which will take the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to every town and village in this world. 1896. At the completion of Jaiva Dharma, he writes end note. Now a personality will appear who will take this Jaiva Dharma to every town and village of this world. A Senapati Bhakta, a commander-in-chief, a surgeon general, a general surgeon will appear. A general will now take birth. Who will take this to every town and village? Second prediction. Oh, that day is near. Oh, that day is near when the holy name will be chanted in the towns and villages of US, UK, France, Germany, and Russia. That day is near when in every town and village of US, UK, France, Germany, and Russia, the holy name will be chanted. Third prophecy. Fair-skinned Vaishnavas will join their dark-skinned Bengali brothers. And in the land of Bengal, the sounding vibration along with mridangas and kartals, Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, will resound. Blue-eyed, fair-skinned, and brown-headed Vaishnavas will join my Bengali brothers, and they will chant Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Made 3 predictions. In 1896, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada took birth. In 1965, he sailed alone, Alone, nobody else. Nobody else. And in 12 years, US, UK, France, Germany, and Russia, in every town and village, Padayatras, in every town and village, Radha Damodar bus party, Beatles, My Sweet Lord, Hare Krishna Mahamantra, radio shows, talk shows, print media, books, magazines, novels, periodicals, everywhere. And in 1996, 100 years after Bhaktivinoda Thakur made that prediction, Vaishnavas, devotees from every single country on this nation went to Mayapur. And every day, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., they did parikrama of Navadvip, all of the islands, chanting Jai Sachinandana Gaura. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in 1896, he sent the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Oxford, to McGill University in Montreal, to universities in America. 47-page booklet, life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya, to everyone. His vision was there. In Bengal, in almost every village, he organized Bhakti Vriksha groups, Namahata groups, Kirtan parties. He made one significant adjustment to Lord Chaitanya's teaching, which is relevant to us today. Lord Chaitanya, through Vakreshwar Pandit, and Vakreshwar Pandit through Gopal Guru Goswami and Dhyan Chandra Goswami, gave what is called a Siddha Pranali Diksha. Siddha Pranali Diksha means we take initiation, right? The standard at that time was Siddha Pranali Diksha. At the time of Diksha, the Guru would give the disciple his eternal spiritual form. Ekadash Bhav, 11 items, Ekadashi, right? 11th day. Ekadasha Bhav, that Guru will give service, dress, name, residence, address, which group you belong to, everything on that initiation. Vaishnavas subsequently were giving the Siddha Pranali Diksha to unqualified people. An industrial revolution now had come in full force, meaning the force of Kali had infiltrated every aspect of society. And that is the reason people saw Vaishnavas doing immoral things in the name of Vaishnavism. They would take that Diksha to unqualified people. Ekadash Bhava or Siddha Pranali Diksha is based upon contemplation, smarana, remembrance. Bhaktivinoda Thakur quoted Jaiva Goswami, first maranam, then smarana. Maranam means death. First eco death, only then you can engage in contemplation and smarana of your eternal identity. Without that, not possible. People were doing illicit activities. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, although he himself at the end of his life practiced Siddha Pranali and Ekadasha Bhava, the last years of his life, he told his son Bhakti Siddhanta, whatever Bhaktivinoda could not do, the printing press in India came at the final years of Bhaktivinoda's life. He told Bhakti Siddhanta, Bimal Prasad, how to carry this mission forward. And he said to Bimal, take this entire entire procedure of Siddha Pranali or Ekadasha out of your preaching mission, and instead of Smarana, focus on Kirtana. When Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur went to Gaur Kishore Das Babaji and asked for his Siddha Pranali, the eternal form, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji told Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, your Siddha Pranali will be revealed to you in the words of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. When Bhakti Siddhanta was preaching at Radhakund, and he was asked about by the Babajis who were practicing Siddha Pranali, he was asked, what is your Siddha Pranali mantra? He said, my Siddha Pranali mantra is Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarorapi Sahishnuna, Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari. It is an impossible thing to do. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur took the lead from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He again spoke against caste Goswamis, the seminal succession of devotees taking over temples, not preaching. And he said, he took Kirtanam one step forward. He said, Kirtanam, how much can Kirtan be heard? How far Kirtan can be heard? But the printing press is the Brihad Mridanga Kirtan. You take the Kirtan, put it in the book, and distribute it all over the world. That is the essence of Kirtanam. He said, by Kirtanam, you will come to this point of understanding your eternal spiritual soul. Through the practice of Sankirtanam, through the practice of chanting the holy name congregationally, through Nam Japa, and through distributing this Kirtan in the form of Brihad Mridanga Kirtan, you will come to the platform of Raganuga Bhakti. Raga, attachment for Krishna and taste for the holy name will awaken in your heart by the practice of Kirtan. And furthermore, the ability to propagate and preach, is a litmus test for somebody's internal development. Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tara Parivartana. Without the influence of Krishna's internal potency in your heart, you cannot change the heart of another person. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, quote unquote, period. He also said, quoting the Goswamis, Apuna bhajana katha na kohi be yatha katha. Do not become a show bottle pretender. Do not become a show bottle pretender, but dedicate your life. Rub your head on the footstone of Harinam Sankirtan movement. That gave Bhakti Siddhanta the potency of opening 64 temples, establishing multiple printing presses, newspaper, books, periodicals, and giving Harinam to 20,000 disciples. Harinam Diksha. He was reserved a little bit about the second initiation. And actually, Bhakti Siddhanta gave sannyas to only 20 devotees. And they were all from seminal Brahmanical lines. The reason I say this is you can imagine the authority, the challenge, and the innovation Srila Prabhupada did to make Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prediction come true, to give sannyas to 20-something-year-old who had just taken up Krishna consciousness a year before. Bhaktisiddhanta did not do it. He gave sannyas to those who came from pure seminal Brahminical lines and were Naishtika brahmacharis all their life. Like Sridhar Maharaj. So from Bhakti Siddhanta and Bhaktivinoda, Gaudiya Vaishnavism had a fork. One was the Radhakund Babajis and the seminal lines from the Goswamis and that tradition, and the other was the Saraswat Parivar, the Saraswat family of Vaishnavas.
Saraswat meaning following Saraswat.
Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the Saraswat Parivar. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati disclosed his eternal spiritual identity as Nayana Manjari, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur was Kamala Manjari. Bhaktivinoda Thakur practiced Ekadasha Bhava. He practiced the pranayama, but he told his son, you got to fix this problem. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, till the last day, he preached. This preaching, this college program, this distribution of Bhagavatam, this is the eternal heart of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Opening centers in every town and village, doing Harinam Sankirtan in every nook and corner, wherever you can find. Establishing a group of devotees who are preaching. And of course, we have to keep the goal in mind. We have to keep the goal in mind. Under the guise of preaching, we cannot be passionate and ignorant. We have to understand that preaching has to go along with internal cultivation and development of Nam Bhajan, Anartha Nivratti, Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti. But it will come through the practice. The Acharyas warned us. It will come through the practice of Kirtan. Do Kirtan all your life. Dedicate your life, air and energy to Kirtan. Forget everything else. And Smaranam will come after Maranam. First you have to die. Bhaktitirtha Swami wrote this very beautiful book, Die Before Dying. It's a series of books, Die Before Dying. Other series are Beggar and Reflections on Sacred Teachings, where he took Ishopanishad, Nectar of Instruction, and wrote commentaries on that. So yes, take time for Nam Bhajan. Take time for Nam Jap. Go to the holy place. Yes, definitely go to Mathura and Vrindavan and Radhakund and Mayapur and spend time. But in Kali Yuga, in this day and age we live in, and it's only going to get degraded. It's not going to get better. The material nature is not going to get better. So that was Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He really separated the wheat from the chaff, took out all those practices. He stood alone against his own tradition. He stood alone against his own tradition. He's not only criticizing everybody else, he's criticizing Bhakti Siddhanta, One of the other seminal principles which happened was that Bhakti Siddhanta said that the true Guru is one who's an embodiment of preaching. And they take away the emphasis from Diksha and put the emphasis on Shiksha. Because the emphasis before was on Diksha. Bhakti Siddhanta rejected the Diksha Guru of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Hare Krishna. And he took initiation from Gaura Kishore Das Babaji. because he wanted to see the real current of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Where is the real current of Gaudiya Vaishnavism? Not by some Goswami who's just by Goswami by seminal birth or by position or title or heredity. If you look at our Guru Parampara in Bhagavad Gita, what is that Guru Parampara? Why is Hanuman not there? Why is Arjun not there? Why are the gopis not there? Because it is the Bhagavat Parampara. Krishna spoke Bhagavat to Brahma. Brahma spoke it to Narada. Narada spoke it to Vyasa. Vyasa spoke it to Madhva. And all of those are Bhagavatas in Shiksha, not in Diksha. So the Parampara became Shiksha by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That Bhagavat Parampara is a Shiksha Parampara. It's not a Diksha Parampara. Doesn't matter which caste or heredity or what Goswami or what temple or what mission you belong to. One who can effectively beat the Brihad Pradanga Kirtan is the true Guru. Who is the Guru? One who can beat this Brihad Pradanga as loud and far as possible. Take away all the nonsense, bring the truth in the center. He is the true Guru. And one who can pass on this current to others, he is the true Guru. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur took away all the monopoly on Chaitanya Vaishnavism by caste Goswamis and caste Brahmanas and this and that. And in the process, Bhakti Siddhanta even rejected some of the stalwarts of the movement. Bhakti Siddhanta took sannyas from a picture of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. 1970 Gaur Punim Day, few days after Gaur Kishore Das Babaji passed away, he sat before a picture of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji and took sannyas. Prior to that, it used to be Babaji Vihesh. He said no. And the concept of Raganuga Sadhana is very much there. But Raga cannot be forced. Raga spurati, swayam eva spurati adha. It has to be organic and natural. Rag cannot be given to anybody. Rag cannot be stamped. I cannot give you Raganuga Sadhana. It has to awaken in your heart. So Srila Prabhupada said, I have given you all the ingredients to make your khichdi. Now you can make your khichdi. I have given you the ingredients. I have given you Apana Dasha and Varana Dasha and Smaran Dasha and Samadhi. But you have to do the effort. I cannot just serve it on a platter to an unqualified person and make hell of everything again. And he said anybody who do not follow the 4 regulative principles and chant 16 rounds is not even qualified to be considered as a human being. It's a very sobering idea. It's a very sobering idea. He said, you're talking about these things, but what? When a sannyasi disciple of Prabhupada asked Prabhupada, I want to do bhajan at Radha Kund, he said, you have my blessings if you can follow the first verse of Nectar of Instruction. He said, no, not the first verse. The first 2 words, Vacho Vegam, the urge of the tongue. People get an opportunity, they start blaming. What is the blame? Why are you blaming? Why are you speaking? He said, you can do this. No problem. No problem. So yes, Raganuga Bhakti is ultimately our essential instruction, our essential prayojan. Yes, Jiva Goswami was asked, by the way, Siddha Pranali does not appear in any of the writings of Goswami. Jiva Goswami was asked Siddha Pranali. So Jiva Goswami said, you become Siddha, I will give you Pranali. You become Siddha, I'll give you the Pranali. Pranali is the process. process. Procedure, the word pranali, procedure. The perfection procedure. So what does it mean? It means that we are required to engage in esoteric teachings. But this Harinam Sankirtan, widespread distribution of Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavad Gita, widespread distribution. In Bhakti Siddhanta's logo of Gaudiya Math, he put printing press and Raganuga Bhakti. Ragamarg and printing press. They are equivalent. Right. He said Smaranam. Smaranam means to write. To write. It requires so much mental concentration. To write. One of the principles of ISKCON was to publish periodicals, magazines, booklets, articles, and books propagating Krishna consciousness. Questions? Okay. So at this time we'll take questions. And by the way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur single-handedly established all this. And he gave his potency to Bhakti Siddhanta. And Bhakti Siddhanta gave his full blessings to Bhakti Vedanta Swami. Prabhupada said I was successful because of 3 reasons. He had the blessings of Lord Chaitanya, Bhaktivinoda and Bhakti Siddhanta. He focused on the Brihad Mridanga Kirtan. And third was his internal development. Bhakti Charu Maharaj, when he did Bengali translation of Bhagavatam, he would also follow Thakur's program. Sleep at 8 or 9 and get up before midnight. Anybody has to be an acharya, you know. All of you are acharyas. You take this idea into your mind. Me and Ramesh Prabhu are old, flat tire. But 4 of you are acharyas. So you take it up. Questions?
So, Prabhupada talks about chanting, obviously chanting 16 rounds, doing 4 regular principles. For someone who's a devotee, or an aspiring devotee, I should say, it makes sense. But I feel like in some ways that can be misinterpreted as saying, like, other people who don't do this aren't considered as a human being level. So how do we interpret what he's saying here? Because obviously as a Vaishnava, you shouldn't be seeing anyone who's lower than you. Right? So how do we interpret what he means by that?
Whenever acharyas speak like that, it's a sobering thought for our own self. One of the central principles of Vaishnavism is hard on yourself and easy on others. There are 3 kinds of devotees. Some people are hard on others and easy on themselves. That's the lowest class of Vaishnava. He's a hypocrite. Second, very common, and by the way, these are very common. They would not look at the what do you call it? Jesus said the big thing in the eye. What is that word? And you are pointing the faults of others. What is that? First look at the thing in your eye before you point the...
Oh. Are you talking about the stone? Like, he who casts this cursed stone?
Yeah, that also. But there is this saying, you have this big thing in your eye and you are pointing to others. So, this is very common. Very common. Easy on oneself and hard on others. That's one kind of Vaishnava. That's what you are talking about. Second kind of Vaishnava, he's hard on himself, but because he's so hard on himself, he's hard on others also. He makes his own life miserable and he makes everybody else's life miserable. But a Vaishnava, he's hard on himself. It's a sobering, he takes the sobering instructions for himself. But he does not artificially become a guru of others. Do not artificially guide and chastise and criticize and advise and all this eyes others. No. Somebody comes to you as a friend, as a well-wisher, as a servant, in the mood of a servant, sure. So these instructions, these statements, we should think, and Uttam Adhikari thinks, everybody is a Vaishnava and they are serving either Krishna or they are serving his divine external energy. Oh my God, you are such a Vaishnava. You are serving the divine energy of the Lord so nicely. Unmotivated and uninterrupted service to divine energy. Unmotivated and uninterrupted service to Maya. And look here. I am neither able to serve Maya nor able to serve Krishna, so I am so fallen. That's the vision of an Uttam Adhikari. I am the most fallen. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes, if anybody takes my name, he will lose all piety. I am lower than a worm in a stool. And I am lower than a cockroach in a gutter. That is what the actual mentality, the feeling and the mood of a Vaishnava is. If my shadow is cast on anybody, his caste is ruined. That was Haridas Thakur's mood. He won't enter Jagannath Puri temple. He had become a Hindu. He was an Indian Bhagavad Vaishnava, but he won't enter. Sanatana Goswami would not even go to Jagannath Puri temple close by, so he felt that if his shadow were to fall on the priest of Jagannath Puri temple, they will be contaminated. That was Sanatana Goswami. Vasudev Datta, Mukund Datta, they won't even come in front of Lord Chaitanya. They felt ashamed. Raghunath Das Goswami would not even dare to come in the assembly of Nityananda Prabhu, so he's paying his obeisances from a mile. And the Nityananda Prabhu said, who's that? He said, Prabhu, that's Raghunath Das Goswami, he will not come here. He said, go and catch that thief and bring him here. I have to give him punishment. So that is the mood of Vaishnavism. In Vaishnavism, if there is no humility, all of your knowledge, all of your learning, all the puja, all the duja, every single thing you have done is a waste. Or you can say it has not borne its fruit yet. Unless there is that humility, that sweetness of Vaishnavism, that culture, that etiquette, it's really just lip service. Nothing has gone into the heart. Your chanting is Nam Aparad guaranteed. You can have any title, you can have any position, you can do 45 years of service. It doesn't really matter. It starts with humility. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 13 text 8, Krishna explains what knowledge is, what jnana is. Amanitvam. The first word is amanitvam. Man means honor. Amanitvam. I'm lower than a worm in a stool. I'm the most fallen, I'm the most degraded. You do some service, and as soon as that thought came in your mind that I did service, he didn't do it, the spiritual merit of that service is finished. Look how hard I am working, he's not working. That the spiritual merit of that service is finished. You may even get some negative marks for Vaishnava Aparadha. In spiritual life, as soon as you think you're better than others, you did something, they are nonsense. I'm doing this. You just lost a negative. I'll give you one example. One time, there were two devotees about 10 years ago. They painted the kitchen. I came at about 7:30, and I'm not glorifying this. I'm just telling this the mentality. The paint job had been done. I never volunteered to do the paint job. But as soon as I walked in, the first thing they said is, "Look, he has come and all the service is done." I knew that they were not going to get credit for that service. Both of them left Krishna consciousness after a year or two. One was doing drugs, one was completely into materialistic sense gratification. So, very good question, Edith. Spiritual life is a razor's edge. It's about consciousness. It's about action, but action has to proceed from a wellspring of consciousness. Wellspring of consciousness. So yes, hard on oneself, definitely. All of these statements should be sobering to us. But for others, we should maintain that mood of humility, service, respect, compassion. And sometimes a Madhyamadikari, he's indifferent to envious. A Madhyamadikari, he's indifferent to envious. Those who don't want Krishna consciousness, is fine. Those who have no spiritual interest, I have no interest to embrace the tiger. One should not have that interest of embracing tiger. Discernment, discrimination, and spiritual discernment is different from egotistical conception of I am better than others. I am not better than a tiger. Tiger is worshipable. But tiger has to be inside the cage and I have to be outside the cage. Tiger is worshipable. But he has to be inside the cage and I have to be outside the cage. That's discernment, not judgment. We don't embrace the tiger, but we respect the tiger from a distance. Very first year of Krishna consciousness, I heard from Radhanath Swami. He said, you should mentally honor every devotee. But if you cannot get along with the devotee, or you feel that they're not inspiring you, you give them your humble obeisances from a distance. You pay your humble obeisances from a distance. That put my mind all right. Any other questions?
I was just thinking, I had a question about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He's one of our main prominent acharyas.
Prominent link.
So I think I asked you this once before, but I don't think we got it answered because back then we didn't have time either. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur had 8 children, or like a large amount of children. He had 2 boys that were prominent. He had Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and he had Lalit Prasad.
Bimal Prasad and Lalita Prasad. Bimal Prasad became Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Lalita Prasad.
Lalit Prasad. So even our Prabhupada, he met with Lalit Prasad. And they had some, Lalit Prasad didn't always agree with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
No, they would fight in the court.
So if they're both the same from the same root, what's the difference?
Bhaktisiddhanta took away the Siddha Pranali and Ekadash Bhava. Took away the emphasis on Babaji Vesh. He rejected Bipin Bihari Goswami. That was a big point of contention. He rejected the Diksha Guru of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur took all his shiksha from
Jagannath Das Babaji.
And Gaur Kishore Das Babaji.
So the initiation was a formality person. Like how Prabhupada, I think he also took some initiation when he was a child or something. Very, like a caste thing.
Yeah. So the difference between Lalit Prasad could not forget Bimal Prasad for not emphasizing Raganuga Bhakti, Ekadash Bhava, Siddha Pranali and Babaji Diksha, Babaji Vesh. That's where Gaudiya Vaishnavism had a fork. So Saraswat line became separate and Lalit Prasad's line became separate. 2 of disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, now this is very interesting. 2 of prominent disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta later on criticized him for not giving Siddha Pranali, for focusing on preaching, and they left his movement. Both of them had spiritual difficulty. Both of them had spiritual. Most of the Saraswat disciples, most of the Saraswat Parampara focused on preaching, and even today they are preaching. You know, our Rukmini Devi Dasi is a gift of that parampara, you know, that Saraswat family, that Gaudiya family, and many others, right? That lady, that very saintly Mataji, Prabha Mohan, grew up in her life next to a Gaudiya Math temple. And even today at every festival, she makes the most delectable milk sweets for Thakurji.
And we also belong to the same Saraswat.
Same family.
Same family.
Same parampara. Same mood, same mission. Same mood. So Lalit Prasad and Bimal Prasad, they were at odds. They went to the court. They had fighting. Lalit Prasad said Bhakti Siddhanta had fallen. He deviated. They said his cause for deviation is that he never received Siddha Pranali, that he rejected Bipin Bihari Goswami, and he's not giving Siddha Pranali to his disciples. And he took sannyas bhesh as opposed to Babaji bhesh. But Bhakti Siddhanta had seen what Vivekananda sannyas had done for him, what Ramakrishna had done for sannyas movement. So he took it. He said, we will use it for preaching. We'll use our danda for preaching. So that was the point of contention. That's where the parampara split. And you can see the results. You can see the results. Bhakti Siddhanta single-handedly opened 64 temples in Burma, London, India, all over India, Bangladesh, current Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, and gave Harinam Diksha to 20,000 devotees and created an army of preachers which will take the holy name to every town and village. Where is Lalita Prasad? Prabhupada told his disciples, I love him. He's the son of Bhaktivinoda.
Yeah.
So out of love they went to see him. Out of love, out of compassion. Prabhupada tried in his own life to unite everybody. That is Vaishnava. Unity. So who was followed? Who committed aparadh? You decide for yourself. The lion guru who brought British people to their knees in front of British lords, he would say, the Western civilization must be crushed. The governor of Bengal is coming to an opening ceremony and he speaks pure Shuddha Vaishnava Bhakti. He ordered his disciples to cook meat for him, for the governor of Bengal. But he said, this Western civilization must be crushed and Sanatana Dharma must be established. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the originator of Saraswat Parampara, and the follower of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda inculcated all of the things which were in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's heart, in his mind, which he wanted to do. Bhakti Siddhanta did it. And whoever left Bhakti Siddhanta's fold to engage in Raganuga Bhakti, there was no Raga and no Anuga and no Bhakti. They all fell down. Of course, except for some. And Prabhupada appreciated some saintly people. Prabhupada appreciated some saintly people. The main thing is truth. The main thing is reality. It should be truth. It should not be a dream. It should not be an ideal which you are projecting on yourself to feel good and to show everybody else. And by the way, thousands and thousands of devotees triumphantly doing Sankirtan went back to Godhead. Whether it was Vishnu Jan Maharaj or Tamal Krishna Goswami or Madan Ladini or Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and they all attained extremely profound internal life of bhajan. Bhakti Tirtha Swami took Nirjan bhajan at the end of his life. Thousands and thousands. It's a factory. In every continent, in every country. I was telling, I know 3 people who chant 192 rounds every day. There are devotees all over were now chanting today and tomorrow, this is a special weekend.
64.
So something, like that, with Naveen Krishna Prabhu, we can start something in our community next year.
Yeah.
This is the special Vamana Dwadashi, Bhaktivinoda, Bhakti, Haridas Thakur, the whole thing,
Also, Prabhu, one last question. Sorry, we can do kirtan for 5:30.
Shishiravan, we're very, very sorry. Please forgive us today.
So,
We get it over.
we don't get a chance to talk like this because we don't have much information. Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't start an organization. He left that an organized religion, and he left that to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to start. Now, sometimes organized religion, I think Mother Urmila, she forwarded this comment to me that you can never get, it's very difficult for Raga to spontaneously come in an organized religion setting. How did Bhaktivinoda Thakur impart that to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in an organized setting? Like even now we have ISKCON. How do we inculcate that spontaneous love in an organized setting?
Good question. This question is asked again and again. I'll tell you my realization. And I hope Srila Prabhupada would bless my words and would bless my intent and bless the spirit. Please listen carefully. Jaiva Goswami started Vishwa Vaishnava Rajasthan. The first organization was started by the Goswamis. And he envisioned a worldwide preaching movement. Jiva Goswami. Bhaktivinoda Thakur organized groups of Vaishnavas. This is an erroneous idea that he did not start it to organize. His entire writings was about how the Vaishnavas organized. He in fact defined duties of everybody. That's organization. That's organization. He just did not have the motor car and the printing press and the money and the resources. But in Bengal, the preaching Bhaktivinoda Thakur started in an organized way. Building a temple requires an organization. In an organized way, he wrote about how preaching movement should be organized. He talks about millions of devotees organized with leaderships at all levels. It will beat the organization of McDonald's and Toyota Motor Company. What he wrote about. And those books are there.
Like go through Makalpatavi and all. Okay.
All of that is organization. After that, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established Gaudiya Math. His will says, make a GBC of 10 to 12 men and manage all affairs cooperatively, quote unquote. The last will of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that. Make a GBC of 12 men, 10 to 12 men, leading disciples. Kunj Bihari Prabhu should always be the manager. Gave a special position to Kunj Bihari Prabhu. And make an organization. United, together, connected. United we stand and divided we fall. A bundle of sticks is hard to break. A single stick anybody can break. Common wisdom. Common wisdom. Ask any Fortune 500 company and see if they're organized or not. If in this material world you have to accomplish anything, anybody can say anything. But if you have to accomplish anything which will not be directed and governed by the whims and fancies of one or two charismatic individuals and would lead a lasting legacy, it would keep the door open
For the next generation.
for anybody to walk in that door. You need an organization. Some people jokingly in ISKCON says, well, we are so disorganized that we would not qualify as an organized religion yet. We don't even know in this temple who's going to clean at the night after 9 p.m. We don't know. It's based on the goodwill of people. We do not yet know how things go on. I'm speaking as a leader. We still don't know how things go on. How does the temple actually get cleaned? We don't really know. If you go to any gas station, they have a sign that the bathroom is cleaned 4 times a day, and at this time the bathroom was clean, and if you have any questions, then please call the manager. That is called organization. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. You go to any church of Scientology, spick and span. Spick and span. That's called organization. We're not organized yet. Now, that's just a joke, okay? Organization means a way of doing things which will work for everybody. That's what organization means. A way of doing things which work for everybody. On a Sunday feast, who's going to make sure that the mats are placed out? Musical instruments are in order, the mic actually works. The feast is cooked on time, enough for enough people, the serving supplies are actually there. That's called organization. So first of all, everything needs organization. At home, do we not organize our lives? Do we say that a husband and wife, if they're organized, they cannot spontaneously love each other? Will any father tell his child that if I don't give you organization, I won't be able to love you? Of course there are moments. Of course there are moments when a father and son are just, what they call as hanging loose. But would any responsible parent would have a disorganized house or a disorganized bathroom? Organization is a fundamental principle which is seen in birds and insects and animals. And humanity has to be organized in order to make sense of anything. Without that, it would be a chaotic principle. Now, within an organization, the father ultimately at a household level has to make sure that he doesn't develop OCD and make his child a wreck. The goal of raising the child is to make him materially successful, and that after high school he can go to a good college and he's a good human being. So the goal of organization has to be kept in mind. The real current of bhakti has to flow in the temple. The kirtan of the holy name, okay, I did organize the Sunday feast, but there is nobody to chant the name and nobody who has some love of God and some purity to chant the name. So within the kernel of organization, within the structure of organization, the real thing, the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, non-stop kirtan, non-stop artiks, wonderful prasadam, wonderful preaching, hundreds and thousands of books have to be going out from the temple or from any center or from any organization which a Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya belongs to. Thousands and hundreds of thousands of books, regular sadhana and artik to the deities, wonderful bhoga, wonderful prasadam distribution, and the holy name. These 3 things. The Brihad Mridanga of books, wonderful offerings to the Lord, which is then distributed to anybody and everybody, including birds and squirrels, because they are going back to Godhead. And every flower which is offered to Radha Nadbar, that tree is taking a human birth as a devotee or going straight back to Godhead. And every single flower and every single leaf is going back to Godhead. This temple should be an embassy to get your visa stamp for Godhead. But you have to have a temple. Organization is very important. And the more you organize, the more structure and character and sanity is there in people's lives. To maintain sanity, you have to have organization. It's very important. But along with that, the focus should be on the holy name, on japa sadhana, on kirtan, on giving the holy name out, of distributing millions and billions and trillions of books, on inviting people to participate in the process of Harinam Sankirtan. And The leaders and the market sweepers of the holy name have to make sure their own ego do not come between the worshipper and Krishna. They should be transparent via medium. A guru is a transparent via medium. Every devotee should be a guru. They should be a transparent via medium between any worshipper and Krishna. They should not come in between. They should become a via media, a transparent via media. They should create a culture where the people has an experience of Krishna consciousness. Now, having said that, we have understood the methodology, the mood of a mission. Now let's talk about love of God or higher stages of bhakti. Everybody knows that a temple can take a newbie, a new person. The potency of a temple, the potency of an organization is you take a newbie you take from Shraddha. Shraddha is generated through association of devotees. Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, of course Guru, Diksha, Bhajana Kriya, and Nishtha. But an organized religion cannot be responsible for what you do in your own bedroom. And higher stages of bhakti, ruchi, asakti, bhava, and prema, every devotee, it's upon them to cultivate it, find the right association. There is association. Find the right methodology, the mood, the practice to cultivate higher levels of devotion. One cannot expect ISKCON to give prema bhakti to everybody. ISKCON is an amazing, my recollection and my experiences, ISKCON is an amazing organization, amazing place for somebody to come off the street, okay, into the fold of pure devotional service and make progress to a certain extent in the association of devotees. But Hari, what I do then in my own time, do I practice? Do I sincerely follow the regulative principles? Do I really chant the holy name properly? Although some guidance and all of that is there, I think, that is the limit of an institution. That is the limit of bricks and mortar. We can create a safe place and a clean place which does not sting for people to chant Hare Krishna. And Radha Nadbar is there, and Gaurnata is there. But then, then it's individual. It's individual. And individuals have to then take an effort, make an extra effort. When you go to Ganga, you can easily slip on the banks of Ganga and wreck your head. So that is also possible. If you're not careful, and if you're too disturbed, you will slip in an institution and you can wreck your head on the stairs leading to Ganges and not even touching the water of the Ganges. And when you touch the water of the Ganges, you have to understand what is a floating dead body and what is stool and what is grease and what is dirt in the Ganges. You got to remove all of that. Then you got to dunk in.
Find the water.
And find the Ganges. But if you go to Ganges and say, oh my God, I see a floating dead body, and that repels you and you runs away as far as you can,
you missed a whole part of the Ganges.
Or if you slip on the stairs of the Ganges while coming down, then also you miss the boat. But whose responsibility is it? Individual responsibility. You have to carry your umbrella. Ultimately, any material organization in a spiritual world, Hridayananda Maharaj said that sometimes, quote unquote, he said, sometimes practicing spiritual life in a material world, whether you do it in an organization or not, is a bad cell phone connection. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful. And also, all of our acharyas recognize that in organized religion, temples are really important for Kanishta Adhikaris. An Uttama Adhikari does not need an organization. A person who sees Krishna everywhere and everything in Krishna, for him, temples and organization, he should then give his mercy to the neophytes. In any temple, there has to be doctors and there has to be patients. If a doctor says, I have nothing to do with that, with the hospital, what kind of doctor is it? He said, I'm clean, I got a white coat, I have nothing to do with the hospital. What kind of doctor are you? Now who's going to treat? But if the patient goes to a hospital and he doesn't know how to differentiate between a patient and a doctor, well, who is the doctor? It behooves me to ask, well, who is the surgeon? And who's a qualified surgeon? And after interviewing 3 surgeons, make my mind who I really want to be getting operated upon. Then I will do is, if I go and embrace every patient, I will pick up all the diseases in the hospital. So ISKCON is like Ganges. ISKCON is like a hospital with many, many sick people of all varieties. And some of their sickness is worse than yours. So you got to be a little careful.
But they're here to get better.
You're here to get better. So you have to figure out how to get better. And for time being or temporarily, you don't find a doctor in a hospital. Okay, the same analogy, maybe you can do an online consultation with somebody else for the time being and try to make it better. Giriraj Maharaj said, asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, right now you are here, tomorrow you will leave, and what if ISKCON is not the same? Because he was having challenges with his brothers. And Prabhupada replied, you are also a nice devotee. See if you can try to make it better. However, it does not take away the importance of a good doctor. So there are good doctors. There are good doctors, good devotees in any organization. In any place, in any culture, there are some good people and some good doctors. You have to be careful of what you associate. You have to separate all the slick and the filth and the dead bodies floating in the Ganga. Find a clear stream, or you may have to go a little bit higher up to the Ganges. You may have to go to Rishikesh if Ganges is not very clear in Banaras, and go up to the Himalayas. Find the source of the Ganges, and you will find advancement. I feel that any Vaishnava organization, as long as they're properly organized, I feel that, Radhanath Swami was asked one time about the problems of ISKCON. He said, Krishna is playing on his flute and Radharani is giving her blessings. So there is no problem. His answer was New Vrindavan, 2003 or 4. He said the only problem in this world is forgetfulness of Krishna. And I ultimately encourage people to find higher spiritual shelter, higher spiritual service, and wherever you find it, it's okay. Ultimately, one should be concerned about the spiritual life of others. Fine, you develop prema wherever you find. But there is one more consideration. This is my own consideration. My Guru Maharaj asked me at the time of initiation, Radhanath Swami said, you have to promise that you will be a servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of Prabhupada. Me and Chandra Bhanu got initiated. So I did that. Vaisheshika Prabhu and Giriraj Maharaj asked people to take this vow. So my life and my blood will be only at the threshold of Prabhupada. I have decided this, for sure. I will live here and I will die. That's clear. I sometimes read literature by others who I find inspiring. And I have no objection if association is readily available. For example, when I'm in Govardhan, I do go to pretty much all the Gaudiya Math mandirs, and if I see some very venerable Vaishnava, or if a Radhakund Babaji, like for example Anantadas Babaji, I've read all his literature. If Anantadas Babaji was giving a class, I would go and listen to the class. But then I would go back to my ashram and I would practice what I have heard. So I had decided that every single ounce of my blood will only be dedicated to Prabhupada and his movement, and I can try to make it better. Even if I sweep the temple or clean the temple, that's an improvement. That's an improvement for the consciousness of everybody else. And I totally believe that loyalty and integrity and commitment are spiritual virtue. It is not a spiritual virtue to go like a dog and find wherever you can find some succor. Like a chakora bird, I will only drink water if the cloud gives me. Spiritual life is not about knowledge or what makes you feel good or temporary boost of false ego or temporary bhava because I met an empowered Vaishnava. That is not spiritual life. Spiritual life from A to Z is about character development. It is not about how good of a kirtan, how good of a class, how good of a cook, how good of a dresser you are. These are simply material abilities which you are dovetailing in spiritual life, and that has its limit. Donating money or building temple or dovetailing has its limit. Spiritual life is about development of character. A good soccer team, they stay together whether they win or they lose. In a team, when you make a mistake and you lose an important championship game, you do not blame your friends. You go on their back and you say, thank you very much, you did great. It was my fault. Let's get better together. That is basic human virtue. What about basic human virtue of integrity, accountability, loyalty, staying together in thick and thin? What about all that? I do not necessarily judge those who left. I don't necessarily judge. Most of them were worse off for that. Some probably did well, and that's good. Good for them. But I'm generally skeptical of somebody criticizing an organization. You should read Jordan Peterson. Organization has a reason why it exists. There is a lot of wisdom in an organization. When you criticize an organization, because it means that you're an ignorant fool, number one. You really do not understand the intricacies and dynamics which go within an organization. Anybody who goes and carte blanche or blanketly criticize an organization is a fool number one. For guaranteed. He has no touch with reality. He has no touch with his own reality. He has no touch with the reality of how this world works and how difficult sometimes things are. He has no understanding. Or he's simply on meth and cocaine. I'd go to the extent of saying that. Any sober-minded Vaishnava would never criticize an organization. You can go and do better. Simple. That would be more productive use of your energy, wouldn't it be? Bhaktivinoda Thakur would philosophically assassinate caste Goswamis. Philosophically. Okay, you can tell us what are the philosophical problems, I will fix it. Or better, you can talk to somebody and try to fix it. Or better, you can fix it. In generally speaking, I have more trust from those who are trying to solve the problem. It's easy to criticize the night, it's difficult to light a candle. And instead of criticizing the entire darkness, you light a candle. Just light a candle. So these are my thoughts. I fundamentally believe ISKCON needs much, much greater depths of organization, much greater depths of leadership, much greater depths of devotees who have MBAs and organizational abilities to come into leadership. I fundamentally believe ISKCON has to go a long way in organizing itself. I think organized religion is the way in 21st century to go forward, to create a worldwide movement of devotees who can really make a difference in this world. I feel that every ISKCON temple, every leader should try to be, every devotee should be a transparent via medium. Every devotee should take it upon himself to chant the holy name as purely as he can and distribute Harinam Sankirtan, Prabhupada books, Krishna's prasadam, the love of deities, festivals and all of that to the best of our abilities. I truly believe that ISKCON has 800 temples and we minimum need as many towns and villages are there in this planet Earth to actually be called as an organized religion. We are not an organized religion until we have a temple, a center, and Harinam party in every town and village of this planet Earth. That means every town and village. And that's what Prabhupada wanted. That's what Prabhupada said repeatedly. And then we can discuss if we are good or not. And meanwhile, let the dogs bark. Let the dogs bark. It is the person who's in the ring and who's pouring his blood and sweat, as you have heard that article by the Divya Swami, who's actually fighting the war. And anybody can say any damn thing which comes to their mind. So that's my final opinion about it. And my final opinion is spiritual life is not about an organization or lack of it. Spiritual life is about loyalty, commitment, integrity, teamwork, steadiness, commitment, sacrifice. Spiritual life means tapasya, yajna. Where is my tapasya? Where is the yajna? In just simply taking a pot shot at others. Where is the tapasya? Where is the yajna? Huh? Did you give your blood for the sin of man? Huh? How are you going to get redemption?
Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki
Jai.
Premvilas Prabhu ki
Jai.
Kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavane